Yeah. Yeah. Gosh, the black background really confuses this little camera because there is a lot of brightness. I don't know what we're gonna do about it. Are you gonna raise the levels or lower them now? No, that's it. Yeah, it's really burning on the faces. I think it's just at the camera. Maybe if I get a bit closer. Once the two of them are sitting there, yeah, because the background is so dark.
Can it be darker for you, Blake?
Preferably not, isn't it? You want lighter, do you?
No,
but it's just it's burning out.
Yeah. Well, ideally, the background wouldn't be so dark. That's all. It's not about the amount of light. Let's see how that looks.
That light won't last long though.
No, but for me it's much better because that camera I cannot adjust the iris.
That's fine.
With all the dark in the back, it's really confusing. Fantastic.
It doesn't do it. Yeah. You want to go sit in that middle seat?
Yeah, the middle one.
Gentle feminine voice.
Yeah.
Very soft and gentle. Gentle. Like a flower. Awesome.
Very. Can you bring that microphone closer? Just lift it up, lift up all the sense.
How's that? Is that better for sound?
Yeah. Oh, like, hold up, sit back down again, sorry, sit back down. Okay, cool, thank you.
Can I go?
Yeah. You? Yeah. There's a real person with a real life who's saying that. Yeah. But I think
Yeah. Looks very nice now.
Yes, no, it looks nice. For our lovely online audience, we will begin in 3 minutes. Stay with us.
as soon as I did that, I should have known. But I'm like, what happened? Anyway, so he
Hey, you can sit over here. Yeah.
Is it over?
No, it's about to start. We're running a bit late. We're already broadcasting live,
Mm-hmm.
so it's all happening.
Yeah, maybe drinking.
There's some juice and all that just around the corner if you want.
Some wine.
Okay. I'm just gonna bring some. Suki was so apologetic. She thought it was next week. Paul Norton was here in town and he didn't get the email because I sent it to his old address. David is watching. Fantastic.
At home.
Yeah.
We have to do it, Mark.
Yeah.
I can see the people that we're talking to. All right. All right, Steve. I'm just going to see you, I think.
That's right. Make yourself comfortable. Yes, make yourself comfortable. Paul feels like he's on a radio show.
I do. I can't see who I'm talking to. I can see Leanne in the front there. Jodie there. See over there. And the rain has stopped playing.
Welcome to the first in our series of conversations, which is an initiative we're trying to really make a history of contemporary dance in Australia currently, and we'll be building this archive up over time. But we're starting with a conversation with Anouk van Dijk and Paul Selwyn Norton, and I'd like to, sorry, I've got the order of this wrong, but I want to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and their ancestors and their traditional owners of the land. And I'd also like to say that we're Skyping this conversation, or not Skyping, we're
Broadcasting
this conversation as part of the idea of really making an archive, building on the archive, inviting different people to join the conversation. As time goes on, it will become more interactive and people will be able to join in. But this is just a first test, which is why Alejandro is down here. So, welcome Paul and Anouk. Welcome all of you. This is the idea is that this is it is building up this archive. We're speaking to Paul and Anouk and learning more about them, about their history, their shared history, the sense of their impact on Australian choreographic practice, what's happening here now, but also we want you to join in. So it's meant to be. It's meant to be a kind of informal conversation. So I want you to feel like you can ask questions, participate in the conversation now, because all of you are part of this history as well, part of the present, part of the history that we're accumulating. And so here we are.
Sit down, that's good. Finally sit down, Margie, good.
Yes, so Anouk is the artistic director of Chunky Move and moved to Australia in 2012. And Paul is the director or artistic director of
Artistic
Strut.
director will do.
Of Strut, or Strut Up and Dance.
Strut Up and Dance is the program title, but the organisation is called Strut.
So the conversation is called Being Curious. So, and we wanted to start a little bit with the idea of, wanting to touch on inspirations, marking points, transitions. But we had a conversation at the end of last year. I'm harking back to a little bit about some of the kind of the touch points that we talked about. I'm here a little bit as a marker and a transition point as well. You know, so I'm not joining in the whole of the conversation, but here to kind of, when it's time to move to another section or interject a little bit. I've got some questions I'm particularly keen to ask. But also please do join in as well. We can see you a little bit. Many of you I know, but there are also many faces here that I don't know, so do just feel welcome to join in. That's what we're here for. So I wanted to ask, because I really felt that this was a point where we could get to know the professional and the non-professional side of Paul and Anouk at the same time. So, and yeah, I suppose that sense of what it is to be an artist and the way that you're dealing with the personal and the professional, and as artists you're really drawing on your personal interests are your creative passions. So anyway, I thought that we could start with a sense of, you know, what your first professional situation was, when you were first in a professional situation.
Oh, mine was illegal because I was still in school, but I got paid, but off the records. So I was 18. Yeah, that was my first. I was dancing to Schoenberg music. It was really beautiful, very dramatic, and that beautiful skirt on, I remember. And it felt like real. No, I'm serious. It was really exciting. That was my first professional appearance in a very tiny theatre.
How did you get there?
One of my teachers in school had choreographed that, and she had a company outside of the school, and she asked me to join that company. And I was, I think, an understudy for another dancer, but I picked it up faster, so I ended up in the work, which was really exciting. Yeah. But I was in the second year in school, so that was my first experience. And I could dance with these much better dancers than me, so that was really thrilling.
I was studying medicine. I did my first degree. I took a year off, went to Amsterdam, wild, young, single, and gay, and running around the whole of Holland having a party really for the year. And I was spotted in a discotheque breakdancing, and offered a contract by a company there called Cloud Chamber. I thought, I'll do this for a year, and I'll go back to my immunology degree, which I didn't want to go back to, obviously. And I stayed with them another year thinking, that's it, I'll get it out of my system. I just put it more into my system, basically. Once you let those angels and demons fly around, it's very, very difficult to let them put them back in. So I then committed to then a little bit more training, and I had never been to school, so I really had a kind of back-assed, unrecommended pathway into the industry, and I was very, very lucky all through my career for people to see me performing on stage. So I never had to really audition. I was always given opportunities, wonderful opportunities by people that even saw my work or saw me performing in other people's work. But that first one was me showing off in a discotheque, bang, I got a contract.
And so were there kind of transitions for you? Like, did you go from, you went from being a doctor to being a dancer, being a choreographer? Were you shocked?
I mean, I was in love with Kate Bush when I was 13, you know, and she was a performing singer and a dancer, and I was doing little performances with other guys and girls in my mum's sitting room to Kate Bush songs. We were doing a technical merit, 7 out of 10, artist interpretation, 10 out of 10. So we were doing little, like, So You Think You Can Dance was already way back in the late 60s. I was when I was a kid. So I was already a closet performer and a closet choreographer. But I just didn't realize it. And then I was given the opportunity to realize it, and then off I went. It's Kate Bush's fault, I promise. Nothing to do with it.
When you arrived in Australia, like, you were coming here a little bit before Paul, weren't you? You had an ongoing relationship with Australia.
I've been very blessed. Gideon Ozanic actually danced for me. You probably remember him from Paul. Remember that? 1994. Gideon and I worked together at that show. And gentleman he is, he was very reciprocity. He said, Paul, when Chunky was a little bit more consolidated, I'll bring you out to Sydney, which he did 2 years later, because that's when Sydney of Chunky was a Sydney-based organisation. organisation then. So I came out here. I had Nellie Benjamin and Brett Daffy and Fiona Cameron and Luke Smiles and Byron Perry. I mean, I had a dream team down in Bangarra Studios working on a show. I fell in love with Sydney, and because I grew up in Africa and Jamaica, and I have a bit of an Anglo-Saxon background in terms of my education. Literally cycling through the botanical gardens, you see an oak tree next to a palm tree, and I went, that's home. And that was 1996, so it took me another 20 years to kind of get my act together. I always knew that once I got to about 40 that I committed to immigrate into this country. So since 1996, I have a working relationship with Australia and Australian artists, but mostly in Sydney. Sydney's really where my artistic cohort has been, through Stalker and Strings Attached and other people.
So I'll ask you, Anouk. You came. Did you have much of a relationship with Australia before? I'm interested in your looking at it, arriving in Australia, taking up a position here, and then what your perspective, the way that you view dance in Australia, the way you're viewing dance making, the kind of the structure and the system here.
I had a bit of a relationship with Australia. I had family living in Sydney for a couple of years, so I went down to visit them in 98, and we hung out together on the beach, actually.
Your mum, we went walking out to Medlin, didn't we? I remember that day.
It's really nice. Yeah. I think I was teaching for Chunky.
You taught while we were on stage at Signal Centre. You did?
I think, yeah, that's so. I know Gideon from Holland, and Selwyn and I know each other for a long time. So I was in Sydney there for the first time for a family visit and a little Chunky teaching. And then the second time I came back was in 2006 with one of my performances, Style, for the Adelaide Festival. And we did Sydney Opera House as well in that year with my Dutch company. And then the next time was in 2011 with my show Trust that we brought to the Perth Festival. And that was also the time when the word was out that Chucky would need another artistic director. And in Perth, I was seriously considering if I would apply. And I had conversations with Australian people who actually if I should apply or not. And then I applied.
And so, what's your when you arrived? What was your impression of the system and the working here?
Well, I mean,
how did you adjust?
For me, apart from that Chunky is an amazing company, and that Gideon did an incredible job to build a very versatile audience for an art form that's always changing, and an audience that really appreciates the changing art form, which is really amazing, I think, what he did with Chucky in Melbourne. So that was, of course, a big attraction for me to step in, be his successor and continue the dream of what contemporary dance is in a contemporary society. And my interest in my work had become more and more about psychology of space in the broadest sense of the word. So space could be architecture, nature, culture, people, individuals, the internal self. So it's a very vast topic that I'm addressing. More and more interested in site-specific work, and site-specific as being making a work for one space, which could be an outdoor space, could be a theatre as well. But I had a shift of thinking around that. And for about 10 years, I've been making work in weird places in the world. Like I was in Russia quite a bit, I was in China quite a bit. And the work that I made there was really strong because I was out of my comfort zone. I was in a place that I didn't know. I was in a place that had different value systems around psychology of behavior, about psychology of space, and it really was really inspiring. So I was thinking, I come from a country that is the size of the fifth of Victoria, there's 16 million people living there, and I moved to a continent with only 22 million people. What would that do to my work if I would make that enormous change? So basically it was a real serious artistic choice. What happens if I start to work and think from a completely different context of a society that's so old and so young at the same time, that is predominantly migrants like me, immigrants like me. What would I make? And I couldn't answer that question, and I was like, that I have to do it, because I don't know what I would make. So that was the main reason to move. And then what did I see? Yes, what did I see? A lot, yeah. So what I saw was like, okay, the idea of what a country is, I have to completely recalibrate my idea of what a country is, or I have to translate what it is. So now I see Melbourne as a country and Sydney is a country, and now I start to understand it. Perth is not a country. Start to understand it a little bit better. I start to understand what the tyranny of distance is here, and how that informs the psyche of the people and the value systems of people a lot, which I still have to get my fingers on. What does that mean, how I communicate with people? I understand already before I moved here, like, oh, Anouk, you're Dutch, so they're going to have such problems here because you're so direct. And I know it's because the language is structured in a different way than the English language, and native speaker doesn't have that problem as much as I do. So, that's a very challenging thing to understand. How do people communicate with each other? I feel, if I think this is more like China, I understand better how to communicate to people, because I'm a bit more familiar with China so far than with Australian people. So people more, from a Dutch perspective, are more indirect, but you could also say people are way more polite. So there's a different way how you do business, a different way how you get people come out of their comfort zone, there's a different way how I work with my performers. And then my performers bring in a completely different value system, which I'm starting to so appreciate now. So it's affecting my work, obviously. Yeah.
Paul, would you like to say something about the impact that Australia is having on you?
Well, my relationship with Australia is probably a little bit more embedded from the beginning 20 years ago. It's nearly a 20-year relationship. The position I'm in now and the perspectives that I have now running Strut are very, very different from the perspectives I had when I first arrived here 20 years ago, working as an independent choreographer. So, which end would you like to speak from? Now, okay. Well, now I work for Strut, which is an art and development organization. So basically, the job is to take care of the well-being of the whole sector. And since we now have a national mandate, I feel it as a beautiful and wonderful gift and responsibility to serve the nation with opportunity. If I could really put a stupid tagline behind Strut, it would be, not a stupid one, but it may be a bit more comical. It would be mulching the sector with opportunity. Because I do grow my own food, and I think it's very important to make a very vibrant, healthy soil. And that's literally what I'm doing with Strut over the next 3 years, is to provide opportunity for every Australian artist. There's an ecology here. It would be really patronizing of me to just go, everyone has to be this way, everyone has to think this way, choreograph this way, dance this way, like this way, costume this way. That puts people's noses seriously out of joint. So that's not the mandate that I'm coming with. There are beautiful pockets of poetry happening in Perth, way over there, way down there in Western Australia, in Melbourne and Sydney. But there's fantastic work happening. Who am I to come here and say, my way is better, the Strut way will be better? It's not about that. It's providing pathways of opportunity to create success for any kind of independent contemporary dance artist in Australia. There is phenomenal work here, and we have phenomenal possibilities and partnerships with organizations and independent dancers. It's about exposure, it's about aspirational choices, it's about having great opportunities to work with national, international, and local masters. And so that's literally what we're doing. It's recognizing what you have already and building upon that. Does that help a little bit?
That's, I'm thinking about the two of you as leaders, but also that you're both growing new kind of aspects, like Paul, you as a maker, much more as a maker, but now as someone who's developing this idea around the ecology, the national ecology, and also your micro ecology in Perth. And then Anouk, your kind of sense of your, a maker, a director of a company in Holland, very successful, and then coming here and moving into this company. And thinking, I suppose, about the ecology that has been developed through the company, and then this look for your new kind of artistic ecology, but the ecology that's happening within Chunky Move, like just seeing keep everything. And I was wondering where you were thinking, how you balance your thinking of the direction of the company now between your making it being something that's supporting other people's work, what your kind of, how that works for you, what the balance is for you, what your desire for the company is.
Well, Chunky remains a choreographer-driven company. In that sense, it's very much similar to the time of Gillian. So I make every year the big main stage work, or offsite, depends where we decide to perform. And every year we try to give opportunity for a very, very interesting maker to do work for the company, and having the chance in the next Move program to have a chance to really do a work from beginning to end in one cycle, and not having to wait too long for the next one, and to be able to be fully produced by a company and have the knowledge. I have an incredible staff, very knowledgeable staff, from production to publicity, marketing, and personnel thinking. There's really, really great people working at Chunky Move. So this maker can access that knowledge from all those people all at the same time, and I'm there when that person needs me as well. So I find that a really important way for people to make, to really make a next step, and also to think for a bigger audience. Because the problem for a lot of makers is that they make for their peers. And that means that the peer assessment is so strict and strong that sometimes that can also be quite suffocating, because you want to please your peers all the time. And then the moment you start to think a little bit more outside the pool of your peers, but you start for a bit broader audience, that can be also a real relief, because you might also be able to access what you really want to do. And not only what you have to reflect and bounce back on your peers who are there to criticize you all the time. So I find it interesting to help makers think what freedom that actually is giving them. So the next Move program is a really important one in Chunky. The thing that has really, what I've really added with the company is that I find it really important for very young makers to have the chance to be assistant of the artistic director for a while, to just follow the whole process from beginning to end until opening night, and to see how that runs, sit in the production meetings, sit in meetings with designers, etc., etc. And so I've started the Choreographics Common program, which has been really amazing for the people who've done it. It's been really amazing because, like Shemin, who was one of the last ones, she said, like, oh, I can actually say to my composer that I don't like the music, how great. So it can be very small things that helps them to understand and to get a little bit of the view from the other side, to see, okay, how do you deal with tired dancers? You have a staff meeting, but at the same time you still have to organize that interview, and you have to work on your choreography all at the same time. How do you do that? So I find it really important that people have access to that kind of way.
How do you get to be in the Choreographics Secondment program?
So far, it's a bit of a fluid process, because it's a very, like, we've done 1, 2, 3, 4, like we've done 3 with me and 1 with Stephanie Lake so far. And it's also, we open up our hearts to another person, so we have to feel safe in the room too. It's not only they have to feel safe, we have to feel safe. So there's a little bit of that personal, would I feel okay if you sit next to me while I'm sweating and not know what I'm doing? How do I sit with that as well? So far it's been a bit fluid, but the more it becomes known, people start to approach me a little bit, and then it also depends a bit on the skill set that person is bringing, to see which project is the right one for the right maker, really. So that's one that I've done, and the other thing that I feel needs a much more attention, particularly for what my work needs, but also I feel that just needs more attention in general, is care for dancers, and for dancers for their further development as professionals. So there's a little bit of a lack of the moment. dancers finish school, they look a little lost. And there's not so much training or information for them how to have a real career. And that's been, from the development of counter technique, really my interest personally, not only for the dancers who do my work, but more as a holistic thing for dance community at large, to give them more access to information that is really helpful for their profession. So we're trying to set up also through the company a little bit more with that in mind, and we're doing every year very big intensives that we have every year 50 dancers fly in from all over the place to do these intensives with the company to help them to get some tools for their careers. And that's been so far great. The last intensive, I think the oldest was 42 and the youngest was 19, and everything in between. And people came from, I think, 15 different countries and 5 different states. So it was amazing, the exchange between people and the networking opportunities. It's really beautiful. But that's really for makers, for dancers. That's really good.
This afternoon, Anouk did a masterclass here in counter technique with a program we're having with Ausdance New South Wales, and there were 20, 25 people in the room working with you. And the feedback that I had straight away was, it's just fantastic to be here, moving, learning technique, listening to someone else, having someone else teach, and to be involved in just thinking about moving physical activity, that there is so much distraction, I suppose, in contemporary practice, in interdisciplinary practice, in a lot of different experimentations, that there is not enough focus on just being embodied, being involved in technique. And I think, Paul, that's something that you're very involved in as well, through the Gaga technique and Foresight technique that you're bringing over a 3-year program.
Well, it's about, as I said, I'm always going to go back to the gardening methodology. You've got to make the soil really rich before you can plant in it. And those two techniques, pretty much the double spine of our first 3-year program. And it's a slow grow. It's a slow grow. It's an aspirational slow grow. And I love to hear the story about how Anouk just said she had people that were 40, 42, down to 17 or something. We had the same thing with our first Gaga as well. We had people that are busy with their exit strategy from Australia Ballet all the way down to graduates from 17 who were still at VCA out there doing the work of Ohad Naharin in the studio. And you think, what an incredible opportunity and democracy and fantastic poetry going on in Rome. It's a very beautiful thing to witness the generosity of the work of Ohad, and then the capacity of all the Australian dancers that we have in this marvelous country. I just want to pick up on something Anouk said about something that's endemic here, and I think it's got to do with it's an issue, and it's being challenged by many organisations, and it's very exciting to see that. But it's an endemic problem, basically coming from the way a lot of independents are funded. It takes you 2.5 years to get a show up, and often you don't have the resources to have that first ground zero vernacular conversation with designers, with composers, with light designers, and that's a very important component of the stage art. What you're going to make on stage, it can't just be you in a studio choreographing to your heart's content. Oh, let's put some sidelight on there and maybe source some music from Fatboy Slim and make a show. That's not about pushing the whole form forward. So just like we're trying to also address this in Strut by, especially in 2015 and 2016, is having this collaborative, almost like speed dating. We get 8 composers in the room, eight choreographers, and 2 leaders in each faculty, just whipping up the storm to see and to teach people to have that first ground zero conversation, and teach people to have the words to say, like, I'm sorry, but I don't want everything on a count of 8. It doesn't work for me. Or, I'm sorry, I don't like sidelight. It doesn't make my work look particularly bad dimensionally. So we're working with the State Theatre and other theatres to allow already young artists with composers and light designers to work in situation. We're very lucky that we come from quite privileged background of working for great artists like, I know you worked for Amanda for many years, where I worked for Bill and Ohad, where they build work on stage. You just fiddle around in the studio, you make bits and pieces in the studio, but the work comes alive on the stage. And they have incredible resources to build the whole poetic truth of, or the political truth, or the social truth of that work on the stage. And it gets to an incredible shift. So in Perth, we're just beginning the first conversation to create those opportunities for artists to have those conversations in situation, to work on stage with Anthony, with interactive media, to work with Ben from Blue Bottle, with lighting, to work with Arthur Lindsay and Marina Mascarell from NDT, with this fantastic group of dancers and other choreographers and composers, to just speed date the whole thing. You can't make people fall in love and go and work together. You can just provide the opportunity and turn on the lights and see it. The magic happens. So I'm really excited to hear that's a really main priority of what you're thinking about as well, in terms of giving people the opportunity to understand from ground zero all the way up to full production level in one go, not in 2.5 years. Just to see what that's like.
I think that there's one thing in this kind of exponential learning. There's a lot that you can learn early on, but the kind of the finer craft, the going into the depth of things, working out the overarching bigger message, working red lines through works, being able to go from an idea, craft something, work it hard, craft it, and then also present it. You know, there is this 2.5 years has developed over quite a long time.
Yeah.
You know, there's been new stages created and more creative developments, and then it's really much more turned into a funding structure. I think that's why it's happened.
Also, Australia Council just announced that they are starting to introduce a new type of grant, where you can apply for one full cycle from the beginning to the end. I thought it was amazing news. That was really great.
But Margie, you have a longer history. Oh, sorry, you have a longer history here than we do. Do you think it makes? I mean, there's great work being made with this model. It's not a bad model, or is it a bad model? I mean, I am just starting to kind of get to grips with it, but you've been here much longer than we have.
I think there's two. This is the people who are doing it. But the 2.5 year model does allow people not to learn from what they did before.
Yeah.
That's it's actually more a 3 year or a 4 year model if it's a larger work.
Yeah.
And then it's not, you know, so there are all these different stages where you learn, you get very intense feedback from doing your work, from making your work, from working with collaborators, from presenting your work. So I think it's also about what the exponential learning is this condensed, intense making of a new work in a shorter period of time. I was just responding really to the mulching, the nurturing, the early nurturing, and what it is in this kind of middle stage. And I think that your choreographics convent program is really addressing that sense of what it is to make a work and to be able to go
through all the stages, and you see kind of, because you know at Chucky we can produce work and then I do last time 2 developments and some space in between, so we don't all go really crazy, but we can decide when the development phases will happen, so I can do it so it works with the process. And I know so many people don't have that choice here are able to make that choice. And there's some other things that I noticed that system forces you to choreograph in one particular way, and that is you have 2 or 3 weeks, and then you need to have a result. You film it, you show it. Once you apply for your next round, you have a little clip of this is what I did in those 3 weeks. And you apply, you wait, and then you start up again. So what if, like for instance, my process is there's nothing after 3 weeks. There is a lot, but there's nothing that makes any sense to be shown to anybody from the outside. So I slowly developed a way of working where actually only in the last 2 weeks I bring it all together, and then it all starts to make sense. And a long cycle allowed me to experiment with the forms of how do I create what makes sense for my work. And I started as a maker working quite linear how I would do work, and it's completely different now how I make it work. I work on all these different conceptual layers all at the same time, and at some point I make choices, and then it comes together very, very late in the process. So thank God, because I could work in cycles in Holland, longer cycles of having time to make it work. Not that I had more weeks to make it work, but I could decide when the weeks were planned and not the funding. It really allowed me to make that way of working. And I notice here that people have all very similar ways of creating work. And I think it really comes from having only 2 weeks and then having to wait, and then having 2 weeks and having to wait. So you start to make work in a certain way that fits that model. Which is, in every country it's the case. Art is political, because political systems decide how we make art. We can, as artists, say, no, it's not true, because I'm an individual voice. I don't think so. I think we're all dealing with the systems that we're in, which is, I think, actually interesting as an artist to have to face that and deal with that. But I'm really excited about this on the planetary survey concept, because we're, probably just a few people, but we will really make a difference for them, and they'll be able to rebuild the practice that way. That's, I think, also from a physical place, that's really difficult for people to build physical practice. If you work with a certain improvisation technique where you develop it with your dancers, probably only after 2, 3, 4 weeks it starts to become something, and then then the month is finished and you have to wait for the next round, and then everybody has lost and forgotten what it was, and half the performance have dropped out. And that's also what a lot of magazines have said to me here, that it's really frustrating for them. But that said, I think it's quite amazing what Selwyn is saying. It's really amazing how the incredible talent that I see here. On a country with only 22 million people, there's not that much talent in Holland. 60 million, we all import people.
I wanted to ask you both, like when you're working with dancers, looking for dancers to work with, what is it that you're looking for? What qualities are you looking for?
I love dancers who have their own, who don't necessarily agree with me. I really like that. I find that really interesting. The dancers that I work with, when it really works, actually most dancers always come through auditions. I do audition for. And why I do that, it's 2 ways. They need to get to know me in a couple of days to see what I can do to work with me, and I need to see people work a couple of days to understand how it would be to work with them. And somebody who I like on the first day of the audition doesn't have to be the person that actually ends up getting the job. It can be somebody that I didn't notice for 2 days, and then start to see the 3rd day, and I fall in love with that person the 4th day, and we work together for 10 years. Some of my dear collaborators, that's how that worked. My dramaturg said to me, hey, look at that girl in the corner, she's really interesting. It's like, ooh, I didn't see her. And then I started to look at her, and I still collaborate with her after 14 years now in making. So that's the great thing about audition. That's a terror, because you might miss out on the ideal collaborators to work with in an audition. And I think that's why a lot of choreographers hate auditioning. Because first of all, you have to say no to people, which is terrible. And second of all, you might not get that moment, see that you see it. But so far for me, it's been the best way. The moment I've asked people to work with me, they were never really great connections. We needed to find each other on the floor in the process of like, hey, let's try this, let's try that, and then see when it clicks and what happens. And then, depending on the cast, there's always a mixture of people. I need mathematical brains, I need very emotional people, I need intuitive people, and I like the combination of those type of people.
When I'm looking for dancers to make work, it's about a kind of proprioceptive truth. They can be in themselves, a sense of virtuosity. I do find very beautiful attributes. Again, going back to the garden, I like people to take me. I can put the garden out there. They take me down the garden path, but they go, "Hey, Paul, look what's happening behind the vivacious borders." or behind the shed. Let's go there and have a look. And then they take me off. They take me off the recommended path, and down I go, and I go, wow. I was very, very lucky in my early career to work with wonderful people like Michael Schumacher, who's been in a few works of mine. And there you have what I call a wanderer. I mean, he's an incredible technician, but this guy, what he does with time is unbelievable. And I put in a show, and you just have to trust that that person will take your work to a whole other level. So it's very, very, the way I choose people is very, very intuitive. I look at the colors and textures and tenures of those energies of people, and ironically, even though I always seem to get 5, if I got a cast of 6, I cast 5 brilliantly, and that 6th person's always the meteor. It's going to come crashing into the garden and blow everything apart. Somehow, I always seem to choose to do the same thing. I choose a non-sequitur. I don't know how I do it, that just wants to come in and turn everything upside down, and that's also an important part of the process. So I really follow like Anouk. I follow my intuition.
Yeah, I'm also there's one moment when I know, yes, it can be like a conversation, it can be a remark, it can be. And this has nothing to do with movement. Yeah, I forgot to mention, yeah, I like people when they move really well. And there's, you know, some anatomical skill set that's helpful, like for my work, like good hip flexors, very supple arm joints, you know, long shins and arms, you know, always works very well. But that said, you know, I've worked with dancers who have a completely different build, and they were probably better for my work, for the artistic development of my work than the shin bones. So
I think it's also inspiring for people to show you the different way.
Some people like to give you an example. I auditioned for Chucky. I had like a few hundred people coming to the audition, and one person I auditioned because I gave him one improvisation task, and then the one guy I chose, I gave him an improvisation task, and he was sort of this wild card in the audition. Like, what do we do with him? He's a bit strange. I gave him one improvisation task that he did for I think about half hour, just the one task. I've never asked him to do that for half an hour, and he kept going, and he kept going, and he had this incredible endurance or looking into this one improvisation task, and everything stopped. We all stopped. All the dancers, there was like a performance happening there. It was like, I have to work with this person, and he had no idea he had that in him. It just came out in the audition. So afterwards we had this conversation. He said, "Yeah, God, I didn't know that I could be so intense. I've never done this. I've always practiced dance, but that I could be so intense." I said, "I was really interested." He said, "Yeah, I was really interested." So now we worked together. And he was, you know, he was not physically there. He was actually not ready to do my work physically at all. But I saw that. I was like, "You can do that. I can teach you how to dance. That's okay. That's easy. But I can't teach you how to really dig deep. I can't. That's something you bring." As an artist, that's the artist. I can't make an artist. I can make somebody dance, but the artists, they make themselves. You know, I can't do it. I can give them the opportunity to find that. I give them the trust. Maybe I'm good at that. Go for it. But more, they do it. And they inspire each other. Dancers inspire each other.
The next question, is more another open question, is what is risk-taking for you? Do you know you're taking a risk? Is that something that you're involved in? Is it a scary thing?
I've been looking for leadership for quite a while. Strut came along, and pretty much the mandate from all the stakeholders was, Mr. Norton, sideways enough or it's over. So that was quite a big risk to have to take to completely reimagine an organisation, which has done very well, and I've done exceptionally good things, but in terms of a clear outcome for government and other stakeholders was not so clear. So I took something on board which potentially could have been absolutely disastrous. So I suddenly had to think extremely strategically. I had an incredible advisory board and consultants to help me think in terms of business strategy. I was a choreographer. I'd never run really a company before. I was very unlike Anouk, who'd been running Anouk and the dance company for 15 years or something. I'd only been independent, so I suddenly had to think in terms of 3-year models and 6-year models. And that was a risk also for my own growth, to step away from the idea of being a choreographer and being a director of a choreographic center, was, do I want this? this? What will happen to my artistic practice? That was the risk that I took, but in terms of the skill set that I learned, the payoff was too irresistible. Because within 6 months, I had a private MBA, which was a fantastic opportunity and a great gift that all the people that helped me build that business plan and learn how to be responsive to government's needs, learn to have tools of leverage to get funding into it, and great conversation with a very, very open Australia Council. I thought it would be far more difficult. I thought it would be closed shop, deliver the business plan, and that's it. But everyone was extremely responsive and very helpful and very willing to take on the ideas that the board and myself were coming up with. So in terms of risk, I think you have to risk. I think that's something that you have to do. I took that leap of faith. I said, okay, I personally, the personal Paul you were talking about with the professional Paul, the personal Paul wanted a sustainable career. I was done with the project, yes, success, no, yes, success, yes, in terms of funding. I'd been involved with a series of companies that had succeeded and then failed, succeeded and failed, and then failed and succeeded. And I didn't personally want to take that journey. I had a family to support. I didn't want to do it anymore. I wanted a sustainable career. And I thought, Strut, I'm going to take that risk. I'm going to get on board. I'm going to get this fantastic idea that everybody's come to the conversation to help produce and push it forward. So I think in order to move anything forward, you have to take risks. And I've always been a risk taker, so I jump.
So I'm risking not to have to answer this. Yeah, risk can be a very philosophical conversation, of course. I think I personally, if I think of some risk moments I've had in my life, is personally I took the risk to audition to become a dancer, although I didn't know if I would be accepted. And I had to do the audition in the year that I was transitioning to another school system. So I went from so I was not sure if I would be accepted as a dancer, but I changed from a 6-year program to a 5-year program. And that meant I was going backwards academically, which was a risk for the family and whoever, that I would do less academically to risk something that I didn't know if I would do that. And I think that was for me a really big risk to take, but I had no choice because I wanted to be a dancer. So I think the big risk that I took came from having no other choice, but really wanting to do that and not knowing if I could do it. So that's a risk thing. Then from a dance perspective, risk is really a strange word because it's a very end-gaining idea of what dancing is. I'll be more risky with your movement here, more risky with your movement there. So I erased that from my vocabulary as a dancer. The moment I did that, I could really take risk. So there's something in that pressure of the expectation of what risk is that really can block people tremendously. So it's to deal with that situation, whatever that is, if it's like deciding that you think in growing gardens, which can be a way to relieve yourself from the pressure. Or like what I found out, if I don't know what I'll be doing next, or what will happen if I take risks, like going to Australia is a big risk, but I didn't know what would happen, and actually what happened to me was that I got really calm because I didn't know. And I really like to be in a place that I don't know. Then I become really creative. So I guess I have to always place myself in risky situations as long as I don't know what risk. That would be too freaky.
Can I tell you a little bit of a story, quite an anecdote, not about me, but about a dancer that I know in terms of taking risk and magic. Nick Hafner, he was an Australian guy who saw Enemy in the Figure by William Forsythe done on Lee Warren and dancers, which somewhere back in the 80s, Chrissy Parrott organised that over in Perth. He saw that show, he filmed it illegally. He was doing amateur ballet classes. Do you know the story? He was doing amateur ballet classes, and he copied Tony Ritchie, one of the soloists from that show, copied his solo, copied the costume. The next time that show came around, 5, 6, 7, 8, he took off his jacket from the front row and jumped on stage and did that solo of that person, of Tony Ritchie. That's one part. It was one part of his attack with Frankfurt Ballet. So but Bill wasn't there. he actually, 5, 6, 7, can you imagine being in that overcoat, wearing that Versace outfit, jumps onto stage, does that solo, the company goes, who the hell? That was one line of attack. He also not only did that, he actually did a matchstick animation version of Enemy in the Figure, which took hours. He actually showed me the holes on his floor where he put the matchsticks, little dancers, doing the whole of Enemy in the Figure. Filmed it, sent it to Bill, of course, it just strategically arrived exactly at the same time he jumped onto stage. He also took out of his pocket, after doing that solo, a philosophical statement about what Forsyth said about where dance really happens when you start to fall off of your pirouette. That's when it's really starting to happen, the moment you make those micro dances inside your dancing body to decide what you're going to do. So he had 3 lines of attack. He did that solo. He went after the solo. He stuck that newspaper interview on the back of the wall, walked off stage, got arrested, put in the office. This video arrived on Bill's desk of the matchstick animation version of Enemy in the Figure, and of course, within 6 months, he's in the company.
And now he runs a master's course at the HTZ in Berlin.
And of course, when I joined the company, I was like, is this true? This is actually, and it's not an apocryphal tale, it's absolutely true. So I think that's risk. That's absolute risk. I think you have to believe in that kind of magic. We advocate it.
Does anyone have any questions that they'd like to ask?
Oh, you're such a polite lot, come on.
I have a question.
This is Jodie.
I want to go back to something you both said. I'm interested in with a political, social,
Jodie, you might have to come and talk in here because we can't hear you.
Now I'm going to shout.
Yeah, go for it.
And yeah, so Paul, you said something about political truth and social truth, and you said something about art is political, which I disagree with a little in terms of it being inherently political. But yes, when we can use or we can use art to be political. So I'm wanting to just get a little bit. I know it's a big.
I'm actually talking about poetic truth. I'm happy to talk about the politics of running an organization and how it is to be a leader and leveraging tools you need for government. I can talk about that, but I don't think my own choreography is inherently political, but I can hand that maybe over to you.
Well, I didn't relate to it like that my work is like political in the sense of a pamphlet kind of thing. What I meant was more that actually when you start to make art and you deal with finding resources to make your art form, you inherently will end up dealing with political systems, and you are vulnerable inside of those systems on the political winds where they're turning. And that's something that I feel stronger and stronger. Also, of course, the bigger the organization you're running, the more you run into that implication that that's part of the gig of running a company, but also the facts on a much deeper level. And that's if the funding system is, for instance, changed, it can give more opportunities for people to make work or less, and that's what will happen. And whatever they determine of how they will assess you is sort of really affecting how you make work. That itself means you're part of the political system, and therefore art is political. But
do you necessarily address that with your work, though?
I've done that in the past. Yeah, I've addressed those things, but I've always tried to have a bigger discourse in it, and not so much just the more narrow dance or art kind of thing. So I work with a political writer quite a bit, Paul Selwyn, a German writer, playwright, and we write quite politically. And we talk a lot about how the social system and the economic system and the political systems are affecting us personally in our personal lives. And we do a show at the Melbourne Festival now, Complexity of Belonging, that will deal about the complexity of belonging in this country for people. So yes, through his writing and through the research that we do together, it comes out through the words of people, but I also really believe in my work that I'm interested in physicality for people that reflects how systems affect us personally and how the personal affection affects us physically and what does that to our physical state. So I draw from physical states that deal with all kinds of pressure systems that form our society. So in that sense, indirectly in my movement, it's there. But I'm not like a Brechtian artist, so I don't make, in that sense, work that will help change people's viewpoint on life. I like to show people being vulnerable on stage, which is not something society really recommends us to do. And maybe that in itself is a little bit interesting.
Does that answer your question a little?
Well, I mean, as a leader, do you I mean, there's a responsibility, I guess, in terms of even just working with others that consider themselves political, have that kind of agenda, or not, and also in terms of community work and how those sort of necessary things.
I mean, working with someone, an organisation like Strut, you do have quite a broad responsibility to your local ecology and your national, and then also to provide these international pathways. I mean, the political thing that we're dealing with at the moment is we're working with an Israeli organisation, and they're not exactly the most popular country in the world. So there is a serious backlash that we're dealing with at the moment with our corporate sponsorship in terms of our relationship with Masheba and Gaga and Nahara, and I'm not going to let that lie down. So I am in a quite political position which I have to bolster my board and government when they're kind of going, hey ho, what's this about? So that's a very interesting, responsive space to be in. And so there's that we're dealing with. And then there's also dealing with, Perth is not, it's not the end of the world, but you can certainly see it from there. And you're dealing with an incredible organisation like WAPA, which is pumping out masses of art, beautiful artists. They either default east or they go international. And I see it as one of Strut's jobs, because it's about gardening, is to feed that back into the soil to try to make Perth not a lighthouse of warning come to Perth and it's the end of your career. It's not about career suicide, it's about career opportunity. It's about it's literally our vision statement, make Perth a beacon of opportunity. And that is itself a political statement, to switch the eyes from always defaulting to the east, a little bit to the west. And what's beautiful about Perth is it is undergoing incredible infrastructural change. You see grungy north, because they're basically putting the city link down underneath the railroad, underneath the city. The north side of the city is meeting the south side of the city, which is already a great political divide. Now there is the new centre that's been created by the Metropolitan Redevelopment Authority, which is very political in itself. Our offices are in the middle of that mess. We partner with a lot of the hospitality groups, the restaurants and shops in that area, because I take coffee in the morning and you see guys with tats and beards standing next to power heels and suits. What an amazing mix of grungy north and corporate south. It's a very beautiful, dynamic time in Perth because of what the MRA has done by trying to rejoin the great north and the corporate south together. So I think it's a really beautiful time to be adding a cry to let's culture up this city. It's always been the frontier, it's Boys Town. Let's culture up this city, and Strut can be part of that, can align its narrative with that. So that again is a very political place to take your local artists with you into that journey. But of course you have to use, I did use OHAD and Foresight, Bill Foresight, as leveraging tools to get more money from government. That's the way I had to rescue Strut. And I knew that's what I had to do. If I just worked with locals, they would have gone, let's just give the monies to another organisation. Which is, for good or bad, I'm not going to say that's wrong or right, but I had to use the big boys to get money. And again, a political tool. So yes, I've had to play that game, willingly. Did that help a little bit?
Yeah, no.
In terms of leadership? Okay, great.
I think working in dance at the moment is inherently political because the body's being so undervalued in our society. So I think that we're all engaged in a political act by supporting something, the body, which is actually very vulnerable and then is being more and more.
When you say it's being undervalued, what aspects of the body do you feel as being undervalued?
I think there are many other things that are being prioritised. I think that thinking, looking, a whole lot of the sensory things that are about cognitive thinking, like non-moving, non-kinetic cognitive thinking, and the way that society is being pitched, and just the concept of growth and the economy. And I think our society is not valuing your body or the vulnerability of the body within it.
I remember when I first came here, there was a mentality, especially working in Sydney, of like, oh, you have an existential problem, go surf, go play sport, go dance. And is that something you still feel that you're dealing with in terms of a Sydney community? Is there still that, in terms of getting capacity from public or building a robust ecology here? There is this default mechanism just to go and play sport or go to the beach.
I think it's more what it is that can be commodified, sold, made, kind of appealing, you know.
And the body culture coming along with that?
Yeah, I'm not thinking specifically of Sydney.
All right.
I'm thinking more kind of philosophically, globally. In Sydney, I have to say the whole kind of obsession with physical training and stuff, I think that's probably good in terms of what I'm talking about, because people are interested.
Are you talking more about, sorry, just a minute, the whole virtual physical aspects of it, or?
I'm just thinking about people working in offices with computers, utilising what words, the way words are used, the way words are prioritised.
Thank you.
I think there could also be something really interesting starting to happen that with the aging populations in all Western societies, that's going to be such a big problem, just financially. It's going to be such a big problem that people have to so wise up how to live a life. But in there, I think dance and dancers and people who work in dance, who work in dance, to bring so much knowledge. It's just a matter of getting people finding formulas that are kind of sellable. You can kind of market to help people living a healthier life in another way than just dieting. And it all deals with self-image and how far do you go with following TV, and still people follow TV a lot. I think more internet can take over, the better it is, I think, because that will free up people to follow their own screens of their beliefs. So I think there's something good about that. The online newspapers and stuff like that really frees up, I think, our own personal thinking about where our futures lie. And I think still TV is, in that sense, really a very scary tool. It's becoming more and more dangerous, I think, and unhealthy for people if that's the role models we're facing.
More ideas from you guys? Yeah, who's that?
Miranda. Hi. Hi. I'm an independent dancer from Sydney, and I think both your organisations seem to be dealing with the development of dancers, or dealing with the bodies who are the ones on stage carrying the ideas of choreographers. And I wondered if you could talk a little bit more about the why you feel that's important, developing bodies. I feel, as an independent dancer, it feels like a constant struggle to be available to whatever project is on the horizon, but also feel really satisfied and constantly challenged and developed as a performer as well. So I guess I'm interested as to why your two organisations, which seem quite few in Australia, are interested in developing not just the ideas but also the physical being of the bodies that are performing.
I don't know if I can speak for both of us, but I think we love dancing, maybe. I think that's an important reason. I think there's something like if you decide to do a career as a dancer, that is a lot of commitment beyond the jobs that are being given to you. It's a lot of commitment to keep the body healthy and fit and strong and constantly developing, so you as an artist grow. But it's also a really beautiful practice to do that. And once you've found a way how to do that, it's really enriching, and you can continue dancing for a long, long time. I'm almost 50, I'm still dancing, I'm not in pain, so there must be something, and I don't have an easy body, that's why I'm not so big here. So there must be something in there that I found that was really helpful for my career. And I know many people, like Mark Schumacher is 50, I don't know, plus, and still doing great, but he built a practice, he really built a practice for himself. And I think to give information about how to do that and inspiration sources for you to build those kind of practices, I think that's what I'm passionate about, but also the people that you bring have that as well.
I mean, what we're trying to do with Strut is not only develop dancers per se, we're actually trying to develop choreographic artists or movement artists. So the first year of what we're doing this year, 2040, is really about the physical practice, the physical methodologies. And the second year is more about providing the guidebook, a possible guidebook to how to collaborate with composers, and then 2016 light designers. And then there's lots of performative opportunities. But working with something like that Chamber program, it's just about pathways of aspiration, right? It's like putting wonderful opportunities. Even if you transverse those 3 years as a dancer, you saw how that great work of art was made from the inside. You'd have to go to join Chamber or Ballet Monte Carlo or Cedar Lake in New York to be able to do that. And I just think because the works that I've done myself, and I went on such a journey, I don't want to be pretentious by putting stuff that I don't know on the table. I want to put that on the table because I know that's a great work. It's a phenomenal opportunity for the public to rip raw because it's made of 16 Australian dancers. But you can see how choreographically that was made. Also, we're inviting light designers to see how Bambi lit that show. So it's not only about developing the physicality, but it's developing the language skills to just make more resonant work. I'm not saying there's not work that's resonant, but for young people just coming out of Whopper and not getting into chunky and not getting ADT and not having the resources to go international, there's something now at Strut that enables you to meticulously, over a period of 3 years, to develop your craft as a choreographer on all that.
I think what excites me so much about Strut's program is the opportunity for dancers to develop themselves creatively as performers, so that, you know, it's not just one technique, or it's not just a homogenous technique, or it's not just these one-off classes, but there is an opportunity for dancers to self-develop, and I think that's really amazing.
Well, we're moving away from the top-down philosophy of the world. You know, so it's about emergence theory, emerging ideas, and I'm just trying to feed into that by providing opportunity and providing, again, going back to the garden metaphor. You've got to have a robust garden. If you deal with monoculture, it takes one virus and your garden is dead. So you've got to have a robust program so something can fall over, or something can completely fall. That program falling over allows something else to flourish and become extremely prevalent. So it's about being responsive. It's about breathing out into the community, see how it's responding, breathing back in and breathing back out, and then going on that journey together. It would be extremely. I don't want to make people impotent. I want to give it aspiration and inspiration to the whole country, really, but based in Perth. Does that help a little bit? Okay.
I'd like to draw us sitting here part of the evening to a close and to adjourn to the green room. If people want to stay and have a chat or a drink, most welcome to. So, Anouk and Paul, thank you so much. It's been really fantastic having a conversation with you.
We know each other how long? Half our lives, I think. Half our lives, yeah. So thank you, Anouk.
Thank you, Paul.
Thanks, Margie.
Thanks, Margie.